Welcome to another explainer. I am so thrilled to have you with us today because we are going to be diving into one of India's absolutely most famous and honestly most enduring mysteries. If you love a good historical puzzle, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're unpacking the legendary premise of Kuldhara, which is famously known as India's ghost village. Did 80,000 people just vanish overnight? I want you to sit with that number for a second. Literally imagine an entire small city simply disappearing into thin air without a single trace by sunrise. That is the massive, famous claim that serves as our central mystery today. It's the kind of story that has captured the imagination of travelers, storytellers, and historians for generations. But as we're going to see, when we actually put this legend under the microscope, the truth is actually even more fascinating than the myth. Part 1. The Ghost Village Mystery. So to really understand this, we need to ground our ghost story in actual physical geography. Kuldhara is a very real place. It's located about 18 kilometers west of the city of Jaisalmer, right out there in the desert. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some temporary makeshift camp. It had incredibly deep roots. It was founded way back around the 13th century by a highly successful community known as the Paliwal Brahmins. For centuries, this was not a ghost town at all. It was a remarkably prosperous settlement. The people who lived there were actually renowned for their advanced farming and water management techniques. They literally knew how to thrive in a harsh desert environment, which makes their sudden disappearance all the more baffling, right? Part 2. A Tale of a Curse. According to the popular local folklore, the downfall of Kuldhara wasn't due to nature or bad crops. It was due to human obsession. The story goes that there was a very powerful local minister named Salim Singh, and he became completely, dangerously obsessed with the village chief's daughter. He wanted her, and he absolutely wasn't going to take no for an answer. So he issued a terrifying threat to the villagers to force them to hand her over. Suddenly, the residents of Kuldhara, along with the folks in neighboring Paliwal villages, were faced with an impossible choice: submit to this tyrant or leave their ancestral homes forever. Well, they chose to leave. Rather than submit to Salim Singh, they packed up everything they possibly could and abandoned the village in the dead of night. But before departing, they supposedly left something behind. Legend claims, they declared, the land is cursed so that nobody could ever settle there again. And this perfectly illustrates how the myth was cemented into history. To this very day, it is this exact curse that gives Kuldhara its reputation as a haunted village. But legends are one thing, facts are entirely another. Part 3. Doing the math. Let's look at that staggering mythical figure again. 80,000. That's the number of people who supposedly packed up and fled in a single night. Just from a purely logistical standpoint, organizing and moving 80,000 people silently, in the dark, without any modern transportation, that is an incredibly tall order. But here is the historical fact that completely shatters that illusion. 400. That is roughly the number of houses that actually existed in the village of Kuldhara. Just 400 houses. And this really highlights the massive gap between the story and the reality. The towering 80,000 mythical population just completely dwarfs the actual peak historical estimate. Based on those 400 houses, historians estimate that Kuldhara's population, even during its absolute most prosperous periods, was likely just somewhere between 800 and 1,600 people. So the crucial takeaway here is that an 80,000 person population is mathematically impossible for Kuldhara alone. It physically could not happen. So you might be wondering, where on earth did that 80,000 number come from? Well, historical accounts refer not just to Kuldhara, but to an entire network of 84 Paliwal villages spread across the surrounding region. Over time, modern retellings of the story essentially just rolled all of those separate communities into one single highly dramatic event. They combined the populations of all 84 villages, exaggerated the total, and boom, created the dramatic 80,000 figure that we all know today. Part 4. What really happened? When we step away from the folklore, historians have proposed 3 main factors that actually drove the Paliwal Brahmins away around the early 19th century. First off, heavy taxation and political oppression under local rulers. So it turns out there actually might have been a tiny bit of tyrannical truth to the Salim Singh legend. Just perhaps it was more bureaucratic and economic rather than a dramatic kidnapping plot. Second, water scarcity and environmental stress. Remember, we are talking about a desert region here. Even the most advanced water management techniques can't always outlast a changing climate or severe prolonged drought.
And finally, simple economic decline and migration to more prosperous areas. People move when they can no longer make a living. So what we are really looking at here is not a haunting. It's a textbook case of historical abandonment. We're talking about a gradual desertion driven by a combination of social, economic, and environmental factors rather than some sudden supernatural event. Kuldhara is a genuine place, and its abandonment is a genuine historical event. But the overnight disappearance, the curse, those are just layers of folklore that grew over the ruins over the decades.
Part 5. The True Unsolved Mystery.
The contrast here is just striking. On one side, we have the incredibly captivating legend, an overnight supernatural disappearance triggered by a curse. And on the other, the documented reality, a gradual 19th century abandonment driven by harsh living conditions and pure economics. It really shows us how human beings use storytelling and myth to explain complex, often painful historical realities. Honestly, it's just much easier to blame a curse than it is to document decades of drought and heavy taxation. Which leaves us with a final thought. The real mystery of Kuldhara is not that 80,000 people vanished in a flash. The true mystery, the one that historians are literally still actively investigating today, is why an entire, highly successful network of 84 prosperous polywall settlements ultimately couldn't survive and just faded into the desert dust. How does an advanced, thriving civilization completely lose its foothold? That is the real puzzle of the Ghost Village, and it is a profound reminder of the delicate balance between human ingenuity and the unstoppable forces of history and nature. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helped clear the dust on a truly fascinating piece of history. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you in the next one.